Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Career Happy Hour. If you're just joining, I'm just waiting for all of the systems to go live. And occasionally it just takes a minute. There's a little delay in getting things live. So welcome. This is Career Happy Hour. This is an opportunity for each one of us at 3 o'clock Pacific time every week to come and get our craziest career questions answered. If there's anything on your mind, I would encourage you to share it in the chat along with your LinkedIn profile address, because that's how we indicate to other people that we're open to the networking piece. I am excited to share with you. It's Friday. It's Friday. For those who don't know me, I'm Andrew Beach. I'm a teacher of self-education. I help professionals like you communicate value so you can find great opportunities faster, whether you're working or not. I do that through a pragmatic process of branding, planning, and effective networking. Branding, planning, effective networking. If you have any questions at all, certainly leave those in the chat. I am happy to answer. Let me get over to LinkedIn, make sure we're broadcasting there live. If you can let me know if the audio is coming through loud and clear for y'all, I'd appreciate that. Occasionally, the stream service that I use might let me down, and I just hope that that's not the case. And so if you could please just let me know who's here, how you're joining, how things are going, and then also what questions you might have. Looks like we have a grand total of 3 people joining us from LinkedIn. No problem there. I'm always hoping to maximize my opportunities. Vaughn, good to see you, my friend. How are things? Let me know in the chat. Hey, Vaughn, put your LinkedIn profile in the chat. I think people need to see your stuff. You're a really talented guy. Just saying. Good. You're getting that information. Excellent. So the other part of this is, regardless of whichever platform you're joining on, you can get live coaching. What does that mean? Well, it means if you have a question and you want more hands-on support by me for free, I'm here every Friday to do that. And there is a link in the description that says, hey, join me live for free coaching. And so whether you're on YouTube or Periscope or Facebook or LinkedIn, in the description, there is a link there. Yeah, you're welcome, Vaughn. It's been a while since we've seen you or had a conversation. So, let us know how things are going and whatnot. Also, for those who are joining, I'd really appreciate an opportunity to spread the word about this great free service that you have access to. Many people find value in this, and that's why I do it. I don't always come prepared with a topic, so I'm dependent upon you, the audience, to come with questions, to come with current events, things that are going on, areas where you need support, whether that's interviewing, resume, if you must, LinkedIn profile, networking, etc., market planning, trends in the industry. I'm happy to answer. Please put those questions in the chat. And if you could share out this, there's a little share button down below. Every platform I'm on has the share button. Please do that for me. Please. I implore you to please do that for me. So outside of that, it's been a pretty good week for me. I don't know how it's been for you, but to see some positive change that comes from sometimes, it really pays to shut out the outside noise, the white noise of what's going on in the world. Not that I'm not plugged in. I'm just not plugged in like I'm in the matrix. So I think there is a little bit to be said to insulating yourself from the goings on in the world. And I find that I'm happier, which is weird, the less I spend ruminating on what's happening in the world, and I just take positive steps to move forward. I think we can all do that. How do we take positive steps to move forward in any situation? For many of us, that would be in a professional capacity. How do I take a positive step to move forward in a professional capacity? And that's interesting. Many of us don't, once we get into a role. Yes. Thank you, Vaughn. Appreciate that. Tracy, thank you also for putting your LinkedIn profiles in the chat. That just means you're open to other people reaching out to you. And it's identifying that you are a part of this community and we're just lubricating the process. That's all. that if you've got your LinkedIn profile in there, you're demonstrating to others that you're okay, that they reach out to you, and that we facilitate some kind of networking process. So I've gotten in the habit here recently of just sharing the news on LinkedIn. And so maybe we should continue that trend for a little while and see if that's something that is really helpful to you all or not. And I'm okay with that. So I will go ahead and let me put that full screen. There we go. And let's review the LinkedIn news. All the news that's fit to print by the good old folks over there at LinkedIn. I do appreciate them doing that. And so let's get into the news. If we could, there we go. Looks like how COVID impacted talent. Let's see what's heading on here. How it impacted talent migration. Yes, fewer immigrants received lawful permanent resident status last year, but some industries didn't see as much of a talent drain as others. Okay. A new analysis by LinkedIn's economic graph team shows that finance was a relative bright spot with a drop off of just 6%. Yeah, and then mining and energy, etc. Okay. So, I mean, part of that is related to education. So since education is going remote, there aren't probably a lot of people coming into the country to do that. They just stay where they're at, I suppose. And most universities and school systems are doing that. But what is the opportunity here? The reason I share a lot of this news is because I want to identify where is the opportunity. And that means that there's probably still opportunity for talent migration. So if you have expertise in, say, getting visas or getting sponsorship, or if you need sponsorship, this is an opportunity for you to have a purpose to network with this team here if there is somebody who has that skill. So let's look at this as a community. So that's an interesting, so the other part I think that's interesting about this is LinkedIn is dipping their foot into doing analysis, data, right? They're collecting a lion's share of data through this platform called LinkedIn, and it's giving them the opportunity to provide people, i.e. the people that are on this platform, with some information. Let's see. $30,000 raise or work from home? Are you kidding me? Wow. If given the choice between $30,000 raise or permanently working from home, employees at some of the biggest companies said they would choose the latter, work from home. Wow. The Business Journal, citing a survey by Professional Network Blind, I'm not familiar with that, reports 64% of respondents would forego the extra cash for the remote work benefits. Wow. I don't know if there's any benefits to remote work. You know, I know that there's virtues on both sides. I don't know that there's any real benefits to the organization other than being flexible. About 67% of Google respondents preferred permanent work from home, as well as 64% of Amazon, 62% of Microsoft, 69% of Apple, and so on. So what does this mean? I find it fascinating because, hey, you know, 30,000, if we start thinking about this, what is the price of a commute? What is the price of being home when your kids need support? What is the price of being home when your parents need support, right? So I can think through all the different situations where you just can't put a price on some things. However, who says that you don't have flexibility to take care of those things when they happen? It just means you're not going to be permanently working from home. So I think what that means is that's permanently looking for work. Maybe there's something else behind this. I'm not sure. If you have any insights on that, that would be great. Good. Looks like Tracy put, I think this is a question in the chat. Let's see what Tracy has to say. I was speaking to a friend about their hiring process. I was very interested to learn about things people are looking for in resumes when certifications do not match experience, when you join a video conference and stand too far back. Yeah, I mean, all of these things are little nuances, aren't they? And it's why people often, which is interesting, often hire me to coach them, because all of these things are things that we talk about in the coaching program. So if you're interested in that, certainly just reach out to me directly on LinkedIn here. But the idea is the challenge that many of us have is living up to an expectation. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the recruitment function are, I wouldn't say this as a blanket statement, but generally speaking, they're in the process of taking a large pool of candidates, winnowing it down to a small pool of qualified interview slate, if you will. And that gives the company an opportunity to interview some folks. So if there's a deficiency, that doesn't mean you're excluded. It just means that those people who have it might be looked at as preferred. And that could be the difference between an interview and not an interview. So I always advocate that, hey, if I'm dependent on my resume to do the speaking for me, I'm at a disadvantage from the start. I need to be the advocate, the communicator of my skill to a person. Therefore, the resume becomes diminished in its value. That's just the truth. So I don't see what's the rest of this here. When you join a video conference, you stand too far back from the camera. It's not well received. Also not well received if you don't look into the camera, if you don't use some kind of a subtle nonverbal communications, intonation, inflection. It takes practice. You don't get to do this stuff the first time you try it. And so regardless of how you're interviewing, you should probably practice and get some feedback, record yourself, see how you can do better next time. Googling the answers, who would ever do that? Google your way to success, or hey, YouTube your way to success. I mean, both of those are valid, but if you're Googling when they're asking you questions, that's probably demonstrating that you're not prepared for that interview. Anyhow, I don't know if that was related to the questions in the hiring process that you came up with there. So let's see. Tracy, thank you so much. Another question. Another hiring concern is it's obvious the candidate lacks experience when they give textbook answers. No, it's an indicator that they didn't practice. They didn't prepare. If they give a textbook answer, it's that they didn't prepare. They weren't prepared for that interview. It doesn't mean that they're deficient. It just means they're not used to describing themselves or their experience verbally to another person. That's all it means. Good. Well, I mean, yeah, they can be red flags for recruiters who are trying to eliminate candidates, right? They're looking for any reason, which is unfortunate. It's part of the process for them is to eliminate certain candidates and include others. Okay. Good. So I don't know about you, but I take the 30,000 and a flexible work arrangement. So I wouldn't do permanent either side. That's my personal, that's what I would take the 30K for sure, or maybe even negotiate more. Let's see, our retail sales level off. Are remote workers less engaged? So here's the other side of the coin, right? Is our remote workers less engaged? And I can tell you, yes, of course they are. Why? Because they're disconnected from a community. And it's surface level stuff. But the idea is there is something different when you're in the presence of people, not just on video, in person. There's an energy that comes from that. I think anybody could attest to that. So what does it say here? Another day, another remote work versus in-office debate. I don't know that it's a debate. WeWork CEO Sandeep Mathrani, who's probably working hard to keep their company alive. Just my advice, of course, or my perspective. Obviously, the things that I share in this stream on Fridays are my own views. They're not anybody else's, even companies that I maybe are affiliated with. He said it's easiest to spot the most engaged workers. How? They're the ones who are chomping at the bit to return to the office. That isn't the case. Some people are lonely or alone, and they want to be around people. It looks like somebody's in the waiting room here, so I don't know who that is exactly. It just says guest. Who's calling? So I will privately chat to the person, guest number one, that's in the session there. Good. They're the ones jumping. And so those who are least engaged are very comfortable working from home. I don't think that's a measure of engagement. I think you really need to take a look at, some of these feedback studies, some of the surveys you take of your people in terms of engagement. The one I'm familiar with is Pecan, and I'm sure there's others. And you touch base with your employees on a regular basis through that kind of a feature or a tool, and you'll have a pulse on what's going on. Needless to say, folks had a lot to say about this. Join the discussion below. So, I mean, I don't know, engagement needs to be measured differently based on the organization and what you're trying to accomplish. What really is engagement? I mean, that's a big question. I think it's those people who feel honored, appreciated, and of value. That to me is engagement. That means that I'm willing to, because I trust the organization, do things I wouldn't otherwise do for anyone else because I'm loyal, because of that trust. Loyalty and trust kind of go hand in hand to create engaged workers. Some people do work and go above and beyond just because that's part of their value system. And if those are considered engaged people, I don't know if that's an accurate measurement. Good. Let's see here. Workers wary of mask abandonment. Mask abandonment. The CDC's shock announcement that vaccinated Americans are free to go mostly mask-free, both indoors and outdoors, was mostly greeted with a mixture of elation and relief. However, here we go. However, the announcement also caught state officials and business leaders off guard. Are you kidding me? Are you telling me that people weren't prepared to go back to work and that this would be a question? This is a policy. This is not this is an individual company issue. And yes, it's a health issue. I get that. But to me, each company should have a process by which they make decisions on this. That policy is not something that, I mean, anyway, and a sense of dread is percolating among retail workers unions who argue the CDC's rules raise a host of difficult questions around how the new guidelines work on a practical level. That's up to the organization to decide. Use your best judgment. You should have people investigating these things and researching and coming up with a plan to get back to work. With just a third of Americans fully vaccinated, they question how workers can discern who is and isn't immunized without stirring up some of the combative confrontations with customers that have marred retail workplaces throughout the pandemic. So this related to retail, certainly frontline workers have to protect themselves. And so if you're a frontline worker, certainly you might consider wearing a mask, unless they create a policy that says you're not to wear a mask. Anyway, I would think that would be up to the individual worker. And as a leader, I'd probably make that a reality for my people. But that's, I mean, certainly subject to change and subject to what the science and what the guidance is in the marketplace. So anyway, but what is the concern for you there? I mean, when it comes to the mask, is that something that you're looking to work for a company that honors a mask mandate? Or, sometimes this is response to values. And if there's a company that is allowing work from home, 100% of the people, and you don't have to worry about the mask, and all of a sudden you're asked to come back to work. Anyhow, I'm thinking that there's going to be a lot of questions about the efficacy of any of these decisions, and it'll take time and probably some thoughtful discussions on how to make this a reality. Good. Let me see if there's another. I thought there was another question here. Positive law of attraction. Yes. Positive is always the best, Vaughn. And I'm so glad you're here. Everybody take an opportunity and connect with Vaughn. He's a good guy. I think you'd learn a lot from him. And everybody can use a little bit of networking here today. Let's see what else we have here. For Latinos, vaccine barriers persist. Interesting. The pace of COVID-19 vaccinations of U.S. residents continues to decline. On average, about 2 million doses per day are generally being administered, down 38% from April. I mean, this isn't the stock market. I mean, to think that they weren't going to go down over time, I don't know if that says anything substantial. Now, health officials are working to convince communities who have been reticent to receive their shot. Even though Latino adults were hit disproportionately hard by the virus, they retain the lowest rates of vaccination in the U.S. But, as the New York Times reports, hesitancy about the vaccine's merits in the community are declining, though issues over access and fears of employment and immigration consequences remain a persistent barrier holding back the community's vaccination rates. Although the early phase of vaccination rollout in the U.S. was marked by racial disparities, state and federal data suggests progress has been made toward vaccine parity. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to take away from that. I think these fears are not just across different populations, persons of color and so forth. I think everybody is concerned about vaccinate, not vaccinate, mask, no mask, go to work, don't go to work. That it's going to create opportunity for everybody. That deciding what side of the coin you're on allows you to be hired in companies that honor that kind of thing. And so I would really encourage you to keep your mind open and establish for yourself a set of standards, values, if you will, so that you can take that process to task. Let's see. Teachers talk pandemic. Next steps. Let's see what teachers have to say. The pandemic has disrupted education globally. Yes, it has, forcing many students to study remotely, challenging teachers, parents, and students alike. Solutions to this potential learning deficit are beginning to arise, with some, particularly U.S., calling for longer school days and summer school to fill in the gaps. Below, teachers across the country are weighing in on education. So what is the opportunity in education? It's probably the one industry, if you want to call it that, at least in the university space and above, that's ripe for disruption. I think the cost of getting an education is far outstripped inflation, and it's gotten to the point where people aren't going to be able to afford it, and the amount of debt you have to incur to get it is just not worth it. And I think you're going to see a lot of maybe consolidation and shrinkage, if you will, in the university space. But that's going to honor people that are able to offer quality university experiences remotely. And a lot of universities have gotten on the bandwagon to do remote learning long before K-12 ever did. And so there's a lot of universities that really have that down. Anyhow, good. Looks like Vaughn. Excuse me. Let me get to Vaughn here. Vaughn had a comment. Let me take a peek, see. Thanks, Andrew. Carding people to see if they're vaccinated as an early entry policy, maybe. If they don't have it, they wear a mask. They get a badge to wear. If they're vaccinated, we need to figure something out. Yeah, we totally do. I mean, this is something that, early on, if you go back and look at our discussions, Terry Smith and I had a big conversation about what does this mean and what does this look like? And we telegraphed, we kind of anticipated that what was going to happen is there was going to be something, and I don't want to diminish people who have suffered or even died from AIDS, but it's it's that same concept that people will be either ashamed one way or another through this process, whether they are or not vaccinated, whether they wear a mask or don't wear a mask, and certainly carding people with that kind of thing. I mean, you run into some really serious HIPAA violations if people aren't careful, and that could lead to a lot of lawsuits. And I know there's a lot of thirsty lawyers out there looking for ways to make a buck off of somebody else's illegal or unfair activities. So regardless of which side you're on, I think there's something that says, hey, if I'm not vaccinated, then I'm taking a risk. That should be on me, right? It shouldn't be on you to be, anyway. I think it's up to each individual, and the organization certainly has to figure something out. You're absolutely right. And I don't know what the deal with this is, really. I don't know how people are going to shake out, or which companies are going to be good or bad at this. But the ones that I think were able to manage a hybrid model where they had some folks in the office and some folks at home are going to be much better off because they have a capacity to do that. Good. Somebody in the guest. I don't know who the guest is. Let's see. The California State University system seems affordable still. Very large student population is the downside. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There is still opportunities to learn. I think, let me put it this way, and this is just kind of a personal philosophy of mine. And that is, you don't have to pay to get an education. Let me say that again. You don't have to pay to get an education. What do I mean by that? Well, you can pay to get schooled, and I think that actually that kind of concludes our concludes our news here. You can pay to go to school, so you can pay to get schooling, but what does schooling teach you? Well, you certainly get some guidance from an instructor or professor. You read a book, you write a paper, you take a test. So the only concept there that you don't necessarily need to be successful is the professor. And I'm not diminishing the value of professors. I had some really good professors when I went to college. What I am saying is that you don't have to pay for schooling to get an education, to read a book, to write a paper, to take a test. Those things you can do on your own. And yes, there may be a challenge because you're not up against a cohort, right, that might push you beyond your limits. So there is value in that, but that doesn't mean you can't create your own cohort, right? There's wherever there's a problem, there's a solution. I'm sure of it. Good. Any other questions here? You can go ahead and put those in the chat. I am super happy to answer. I love the vibe today, and anything that you want to put in the chat, you can expect to get an answer from me. You can also look in the description, regardless of where you're joining from, and you can likely see there a link that says, "Hey, I want to join this thing," and that sort of thing. So let me take a second here, if I could. And I just want to check in on something on LinkedIn, make sure everything's working properly. There we go. Let me come down here. There we are. Okay, good. Any questions, put those in the chat. Happy to answer. Happy to answer whatever you have. Oh, another big milestone this week. I just thought I'd share this with you from a personal perspective. And that is my daughter, Bridget, got her driver's license. And so she's out on the road. So watch out. Now, actually, she's very responsible. She's actually a pretty good driver. So when you have a chance, though, share this out with your networks. Click the share button down below. Regardless of the platform you're on, you could share it to LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you choose, but sharing it out to your networks would be really helpful. And of course, if you're interested, you're signaling by putting your LinkedIn profile in the chat that you're open to networking. And I think it's a valuable process for everybody. Good. What else is going on? I know we got some good weather. That's always nice. Haircuts, right? It's kind of nice to have a regular cadence to the haircuts, Anyway. When we didn't really have that before. It is semblance of normalcy or freedom. Expansion of freedom is always nice. It's a good feeling to be liberated in some way from any kind of, what would you call it? Personal isolation, that kind of thing. Let's see. Andrew, the branding on your sites is amazing. Using an example for mine, still working on mine. Oh, good. Excellent. Thank you. I think that comes from David. Thank you, David. Office I was in had open desk environment with no walls, maybe some sort of sneeze shield. Yeah, I mean, that's what they're doing at a lot of the grocery stores and different places that you visit where there's a customer-facing component. Plexiglass. I mean, what are people going to do with all this plexiglass once this is done? Do you think they're going to leave it up? I mean, it certainly doesn't create a conducive work environment of inclusion, and it creates a dividing space. So I don't think that's a good experience. What are people going to do with all that plexi? Also, I mean, think about all the restaurants or other places where they have outdoor seating. You can go and sit outdoors and all these tents. What do you think is going to happen to all those tents? It's fascinating questions. Make ping pong tables. Yeah, I suppose you could do that. Plexiglass ping pong tables might be an option. Good. I don't see any other questions here. Certainly, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, or you can come on live. That's perfectly acceptable. Otherwise, we can call it a day, call it a weekend. It is happy hour, 3 o'clock Pacific time every Friday. I'm here to answer your questions, share a little bit of news on LinkedIn, and maybe even bring in a guest. So if you have questions and want to join me, you're welcome to do that. Just go up and click see more in the description, specifically if you're on LinkedIn, and then join me live for free coaching is right there. Okay. Well, I'm going to assume with the delay and everything that everybody heard what I said, and I will call it a day. Yes, thank you. There's David. Thank you, David. You're on live now. Good. Excellent. Awesome. I don't see any other new questions. Great talk. Excellent. All right, guys. We'll see you next week on Career Happy Hour. Stay safe and stay engaged. Network. We'll talk to you later.